So, Chris, let's start with you. Who is in charge in Syria right now?
Well, there is a power vacuum, and it appears to be in the process of being filled by a transitional government headed by a man named Mohammed al-Bashir, appointed by the Hayat Tahrir al-Salam, the rebels that helped drive al-Assad from power. Now, like many other members of HTS, al-Bashir did not come from an al-Qaeda background. He was an engineer who worked for a Syrian gas company before he ran the opposition government up in Idlib province. That government had different ministries that collected customs duties, even conducted some international relations with countries like Turkey. So there is some experience there, and he's been meeting with former Assad cabinet ministers, which could be interpreted as a sign of stability. But remember, Adrienne, Syria is broke, it's divided, and it's dealing now with an influx, rather, of people returning from places like Turkey. So while people are patient, there are enormous challenges, and it remains to be seen whether these one-time Islamic radicals really have become moderates.
I think it's clear that the road ahead isn't exactly smooth. There's so many factions on the ground. I was in Raqqa, Syria, right after ISIS was pushed out. It was pretty clear then that ISIS wasn't gone for good. They're still there, possibly growing. So my gut is, yeah, there's trouble ahead, but something else is going on that's a concern. Every single day we hear about more and more airstrikes. So Gregg, what is happening there?
There have been at least 3 foreign countries carrying out airstrikes in Syria over the past few days. In the north of Syria, you've had Turkey, which has been carrying out strikes on areas held by a Kurdish militia in northern Syria. They've been doing that in conjunction with a group called the Syrian National Army, which is a Turkish proxy force in Syria. In the southeast of Syria, you've had American airstrikes on Islamic State camps. These are in areas that used to be, where the airspace used to be controlled by Russia, and so America wasn't able to strike at these targets until the past few days, where, of course, the Assad regime has fallen, Russia has pulled back. That has left space for America to carry out those strikes on Islamic State. And then in the southwest of Syria, you've had Israel, which has carried out hundreds of airstrikes over the past few days, some of them on military installations that are affiliated with Syria's chemical weapons program, but some of them on conventional military targets. The Israeli army saying it struck at ballistic missiles in Syria, Syrian aircraft, helicopters, even naval ships in the port of Tartus, some of which are decades old, but the Israeli army is striking them nonetheless.
Adrienne, let me just pick up on what Gregg was saying there about Israel's actions, because they've come under a lot of scrutiny. Its tanks and its troops have also taken over. Opponents would call it an invasion. They would say they've invaded a demilitarized zone in the Golan Heights and even moved into small areas of Syria proper, effectively and unilaterally redrawing an international border. Now, all of this has been cast, I think, by Israel as self-defense, but we're hearing from UN officials, Arab states, and now even some in Europe that these moves are not legal, and they're also incredibly destabilizing as Syria tries to hit the reset. So Israel seems to be creating buffer zones. It has done this before in other territories surrounding it. Of course, the big fear about creating a buffer zone is how long you're going to stay and whether, in fact, it is as temporary as what Israel is saying it is.
Or if it's temporary, that lasts for a really long time. Gregg, we've caught you as you're working right now on the cover story for The Economist this week. It's about Syria and the impact this is having beyond its borders. It seems like some countries will be winners in this and some will be losers. Can you break it down?
I think if there is a big winner in this so far, it seems to be Turkey, which provided support for HTS, for other rebel groups in the north over the past few years. And so the Turkish government feels that whoever ends up taking power in Damascus going forward, they're likely to be sympathetic to Turkey. Turkey will have a friendly government running Syria. And so Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, I think looking to pursue 2 priorities right now. One of them has to do with refugees. There are 3 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. They've become a big domestic political issue in Turkey, and the Erdogan government would like at least some of them to go back home. So there's a hope that if a better government, takes power in Syria, a better government than the Assad regime, that might allow some refugees to go back. The other issue for Turkey has to do with these Kurdish militias in the northeast of Syria. Turkey considers them to be terrorist groups because of their links to the PKK, the separatist Kurdish organization in Turkey. And so the Turkish government for years has been trying to push these groups away from the border in Syria. And they think now, with the regime gone, with Russia diminished in Syria, they may have an opportunity to carry out a bigger military offensive in the northeast and push back these Kurdish militias. The biggest loser, I think, is Iran. Russia has also suffered a blow to its prestige in Syria, but I think Iran has lost the most. They have watched over the past year, obviously, as one proxy after another has fallen. First, Hamas in Gaza, battered by this year-long war with Israel, then Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now they've lost the Assad regime in Syria, which was a key ally of theirs for decades. And not only Syria itself was an ally, but it was a conduit through which Iran was able to send weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. They spoke of having almost a land bridge that went from Tehran to the Mediterranean. That bridge has been cut now, and Iran is going to see its influence in the Levant, I think, greatly diminished in the years to come.
And so, Chris, Gregg just mentioned Russia there in sort of the loser camp of this. You saw firsthand Russia's involvement in Syria. They seemed very boastful. I mean, you were embedded with them for a time. But right now, they definitely are in that loser pile.
Well, for Russia, projecting its great power status in the Middle East and Africa has always been a key aspect of its identity. And it's not just a Vladimir Putin thing. I think many Russians genuinely feel this is part of their identity, too. They did take us out on a Russian frigate at one point off Tartus a couple of years back. They brought up a submarine alongside and fired off a whole bunch of cruise missiles at ISIS targets in Syria. And I remember the general saying, "See and feel our power." But now Russia's power is greatly diminished. Putin has essentially abandoned his ally, even though he did offer him sanctuary. But I think they're still in the game. It's not a foregone conclusion. They're going to lose everything. We've not seen a major evacuation of people and assets yet from the air and naval bases that Russia has in Syria. So that does appear to be up for negotiation with the new rulers in Damascus.
So, Gregg, we have just about 20 seconds left for you here. I want to talk about all the outside powers that have been all over Syria in one form or another for years. But now, I mean, what do you see Europe and North America in particular doing in Syria now?
I don't think they know yet. I think they were taken by surprise by Assad's quick ouster. I think they have an opportunity here to use money as leverage. There's a huge need for reconstruction aid in Syria. It'll cost at least $200 billion to rebuild the country. Western governments could offer to contribute money as long as the new Syrian government respects human rights, respects minorities, allows for democratic elections. I don't know if that's going to happen with Donald Trump coming to power in the United States and with European governments committed to contributing tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine already, but they do have an opportunity to pursue that sort of policy.
All right, Gregg Carlstrom, Chris Brown, thank you, gentlemen.